Welcome to this Actian webinar where we'll be showing you the world's fastest cloud data warehouse, Actian Avalanche in action. My name is Pradeep Anand. I'm a Director of Product Marketing here at Actian. I'm joined today by Greg Hale, who's a Solution Director in our Customers and Professional Services organization. So I'll start off by giving you an overview of Avalanche and a demo so you can see it in action. And then I'll hand it over to Greg to tell you a little bit about the services we offer. So for the people who aren't familiar with Actian, we've been around 30 years, starting off as Ingress. Ingress got acquired by a couple of companies, and eventually we got spun off as Actian about 12 years ago. We specialize in cloud data warehousing and data integration solutions. And especially for mission critical applications, we also have OLTP solutions and development solutions. We have more than 3,000 global customers, 95% customer sat or better than. Actian has more than 50 patents, I think it's 53, and the ones we're most proud of are related to performance. And we're used by 24 of the Fortune 100 organizations. Last year we were acquired by HCL at 80% and the remaining 20% by Sumero Equity. So we remain an independent company, but we have a $10 billion parent. So we have a lot more resources available to us than we've had in the past. And along the bottom of the screen, you can see some of our bigger customers. We'll talk to some of the European ones, as this is an EMEA event. Oxford University Clinical Health Unit, Clinical Trials Unit, basically gather statistical information from patient tests from around the country, and they take that clinical trials data and put it into our record-based OLTP database, Ingress, and then they use Actian Vector to run analytics on that data. So they can run high-speed analytics. They even make those analytic data warehouses available to other research organizations around the planet so they can do their epidemiology, etc. At an improved pace. Irish Revenue is a big UK customer of ours, and they built their entire tax system on the Ingress database. It's highly performant and highly available. And they also use Actian Avalanche for on-premises for analytics. Refinitiv uses us for their online trading support system. So you may have seen a service called Electron, and Electron basically provides stock information for traders, so they can basically get information in real time about how organizations are performing before they trade their stocks. And that particular application has a performance requirement of 20 milliseconds for the most complex of transactions. So the most complex query comes back in less than a fifth of a second. And again, that's powered by Avalanche on-prem. So over the last few decades, we've seen the growth of data as the most important element in an infrastructure. It used to be in the 2000s that infrastructure was the most interesting part that IT managed. Over the years, that's become more commoditized, and organizations over the last decade have focused more on applications. We talked about the app economy in the 2010s, but today it's definitely all about data. Organizations treat data as a more than a commodity. It's basically the IP that drives the business. So with this focus on data, a lot of research has been done on the benefits of using data more. In one study by Bain, which I'm quoting from here, companies using analytics are 2 times more likely to have top quartile financial performance, 5 times more likely to make decisions faster than their competition, so making them more competitive in their markets, and 3 times more likely to execute decisions as intended because they are using data uh, as a basis for making those decisions. So on the data warehousing front, we've seen organizations move from appliance-based specialist data warehouses, where it's a mixture of software and hardware bundled together. Examples of these engineered systems are Oracle's Exadata, Netezza from IBM, and Teradata. These are classic appliance-based approaches. And those have slowly become eclipsed by the cloud. Early cloud data warehouses, an example of which is Amazon's Redshift, um, basically reduce the cost of running those data warehouses greatly. However, they still have the disadvantage relative to today of not being able to turn them off and only running on a single cloud. So they're still relatively expensive, which is why we saw the emergence of second generation cloud data warehouses, which are more elastic from providers like Snowflake. Snowflake give you the ability to turn off the data warehouse when you're not using it to improve the economics, and they're more managed, so the user of the cloud service doesn't have to be quite as IT centric. The problem with the Amazon approach is they give you lots of components, but the organization still has to be the systems integrator to tie all those systems or software systems together to form a solution. And then this is where Actian comes in. We saw the downsides of all those approaches and came up with what we believe is the best of breed approach. It gives you all the benefits of elasticity that Snowflake gives you, the ability to turn the systems on and off as needed, elastically grow and shrink as needed to match the demand of the organization, and crucially, the ability to run on premises and in the cloud. And normally that would be a disadvantage because you're distributing your data and creating silos of data. But we basically mitigate that downside by giving you the capability to do a federated join between multiple data sources to give you one logical database. So Actian Avalanche is that cloud data warehousing service. It's a fully managed, ACID compliant MPP data warehouse. So it can grow with you across multiple physical systems and scale pretty linearly across those. We believe it provides the best price performance in the industry. It runs in the public cloud on premises if you need keep your private data private, and will soon be available as a virtual private cloud also, so you can keep your data within your firewall. It's very elastic. It provides the ability to separate storage and compute, so you can scale those independently of each other, again, to suit your processing requirements. And the other thing that really differentiates Avalanche is that it provides a built-in integration solution with pre-built connectors to hundreds of data sources, such as, your Oracle ERP system, Salesforce.com, Sage, etc. And Greg will be talking to our ability to help you migrate from your legacy data warehouse solutions to a modern Avalanche solution. So as I said earlier, you can have multiple Avalanche data warehouses connected through federated query capability. So you may have, in this example, an on-premise instance and an instance running on a public cloud, such as Amazon AWS or Microsoft Azure. And because Avalanche uses the same database, the same data model, same platform, same providing with the same performance capabilities, you get the benefits of both worlds. And if you do need to join the data together, for example, you may keep your historic data locally and your current data in the cloud, you can do distributed join between those two data sources, and we'll take care of pushing predicates down to the appropriate sources to make sure only the result sets get shared, sent over the internet to give you the maximum performance, even though you're in a distributed environment. In terms of cost performance, we believe Avalanche offers the best price performance, and I'll demo that in a second. Just to give you an idea of a couple of metrics, compared to Redshift, which I mentioned was a first generation cloud data warehouse, Avalanche is about more than three times more price performant, and 9 times better price performance against Snowflake. Moving on, and that difference becomes more apparent as the database size grows and the number of concurrent users grows. So the end result is the price of the solution is a lot more predictable than alternatives with Avalanche. There's a lot of reasons why Avalanche is so performant even out of the box with minimal tuning, and I'll talk to some of these features as the demo runs. So what I'm going to show you is Avalanche running against a couple of cloud alternatives, and these I'm just labeling as competitor X and competitor R. And what it does is run the same workload on similar sized machines across three different cloud data warehouses. On the left-hand side is a graphic showing Actian Avalanche, which basically shows you the number of queries being run, the current cost of running those queries, a little bit about the configuration of the data warehouse, and the runtime for executing the whole set of queries. So for this particular test, what we did was use a TPCD workload. The TPCD consists of 22 queries. We're just kicking off the 20 user simulation now. So we're going to run those 22 queries 2 times one times with 20 concurrent users. So you will you basically are going to execute a total of 440 queries, and we're going to see how these three cloud data warehouses perform that operation. So you can see here on the left, Avalanche is already, it's a small data warehouse of 2 Avalanche units. It's already executed 58 queries at a cost of 2 cents. And comparator R on the right has basically executed fewer queries at a higher cost. And the one in the middle is also doing the same. This entire test takes around 12 minutes to run. So it would be boring just to watch these. So what I'm going to do is show you another demo while this is running, and then we'll come back to this as it reaches its end, so you can see the results of the test. As I said, all 3 systems are running on similar sized machines, so we should get good idea of the relative price performance. Now I'm going to show you a demo of a food mart demo. It's basically a market basket analysis showing you side-by-side comparison of two cloud data warehouses being accessed from a Looker dashboard. The same SQLs run against both databases, so you can see both Avalanche and another cloud data warehouse run side by side. And the Looker dashboard lets you see the queries running next to each other, so you get another good idea of relative performance. So in the next slide, I'm going to show you what you'll see in the demo. So it's quite a busy dashboard. As I said earlier, Avalanche runs really fast straight out of the box. So you don't have to worry about creating cubes or pre-aggregating the data. Even creating indexes, with Avalanche, you can basically just run the data and leave it to us to decide which indexes to use. So here's an image of the dashboard you're going to see running live. On the top left is a couple of gauges showing you how many queries are being executed. The middle shows the amount of data being processed, and on the right you'll see the amount of data being loaded as we're running the queries. The most complex query is the market basket analysis, which is a complex self-join or an outer join. And that's the most critical long-running query that stresses the cloud data warehouse the most. And the way the data is laid out, the middle row is Acting Avalanche, and the bottom row is the competitor. You'll see tiles on the dashboard being updated concurrently. On the left is a map, in the middle a bar chart of which items are being sold most frequently across the nation, and on the right the market basket analysis. So the competitor is a popular cloud data warehouse on Azure. It's different from the previous demo you saw beginning, and we'll see how this one performs. So we'll just give a second for the query to start executing. Again, with this one, we're going to run 20 concurrent users. So we have to go over to Unix and run 2 shell scripts to kick off the benchmarks. So 20 user simulation on the right for the comparative database begins. And then we're going to run the same script, the same SQL against Avalanche on the left-hand window. So we'll kick that off as well. Okay, so both database engines are running. They're both receiving queries from 20 simulated users. And we'll go to the dashboard in Looker to see how they're performing. Both databases start off with about 52 million rows. We're loading data as we're running. You can see Avalanche has already loaded a couple of thousand rows. And on the top left, you can see a gauge that shows you queries per minute. And you can already see results coming back on Avalanche, and nothing's happening on the competitors' queries. Oh, there we are. So the other databases produce the middle analysis, but still pending on the market basket analysis. So you can see the Microsoft database, Azure SQL Data Warehouse, has loaded a couple of million rows in the same time. Avalanche has loaded 8 million rows, so 4 times as many already. Avalanche is serving 17.6 queries per minute. The comparator is serving a small fraction of that, 1.5 queries per minute. And you can see the first market basket analysis query has completed rather, on the bottom right. So the middle tile at the top shows you the number of queries run already. And you can see Avalanche has already run something like 150 queries, while the competitor has just done a fraction of that. And the next chart along, on the top, is the number of rows in millions that have been loaded. So you can see the millions of rows that Avalanche has already loaded, and the competitors hardly loaded any rows relatively. So let's let it run a little bit longer, and you can see a peak in non-consumables in the middle tile. Has grown, so you can see which products are selling in which category, and on the map you can see which region they're selling in. And on the right, you can actually look at the average, the top selling products across the country with the market basket analysis. So now we're seeing the bottom database, the non-acting database, hasn't spotted that trend of non-consumables growing. The amount of raw data being made available to Avalanche is far greater than the other database because the data just hasn't loaded yet. We're at 77,000 rows loaded. We've seen multiple trends in the data, consumables, drinks growing. We've seen the map being updated. We can see Avalanche is serving more queries, and you missed insights in the other database. So switching back to the performance demo, you can see Avalanche is completed in 6.24 minutes. All 440 queries, and the database on the right has taken longer, 8.21, and is about to complete its 440 queries. And the data warehouse service rather, in the middle, it's taking longer than both of them to complete the same number of queries at a far greater cost. So this gives you an example of the price performance comparison of Avalanche compared to other databases. We'll be happy to show you the same test. We can run it with your data to show you whatever else you're using today. Avalanche on premises and in the cloud should be able to outperform them. And I can talk to some of the features that enable that. The next slide. So we'll let this one run a little bit longer to give the middle database a chance to get a little bit closer to completion. All of these are running on the same cloud. They're all running on Amazon. And to give you an idea, side by side of how they perform. We've got a performance guarantee right now. So if you're an existing customer of Snowflake, or you're contemplating using the Snowflake Cloud Data Warehouse, we're actually guaranteeing that we can cut that bill in half. As I showed earlier, the price performance of Avalanche is far better compared to the competitors. So the reason Avalanche is so much more price performant than alternatives is primarily due to a feature called vectorized processing. Intel added high-performance computing instructions to their database, to their 64-bit processors a little while ago. One of those sets of instructions is vector processing. With vector processing, you can basically, from one CPU core, access all the cores on the system, and in a single instruction process an array of data in the time a traditional data warehouse processes a single row. So in this example, traditional scalar data warehouse works a row at a time, has to do a context switch as it performs each query here. And as it gets through those, you can see it's quite slow relative to in a single cycle using vectorized instructions. Avalanche can process, between 100 and 1,000 elements in a single CPU instruction, give you the same result in the same time it would take a traditional database to do one or two instructions. That's a major reason why it's so much faster. So just to summarize, hopefully I've given you a demonstration of how easy it is to get performance out of Avalanche, how much faster it is, and how much better it handles complex queries than alternatives, and and also the mission control demo should have given you an idea that you can do it at a reduced cost. And the benefit of that is you can either do more work in the same time, or you can spend less money because you don't have to consume so much time in doing it. In the cloud, that makes a big difference. With that, I'm going to hand over to Greg Hale to talk about our customer success capabilities.
Thanks, Pradeep, and good morning to all attendees. That was a good presentation on the price performance capabilities of Avalanche. A little bit about me. I'm Greg Hale, a Solution Director in CS and PS, Customer Service Professional Services. I've got over 20 years experience in data management and data warehousing, and I've worked for a number of SIs leading delivery teams, as well as a few product vendors, and also have experience of multiple industries, vertical industries. So what is our customer success and professional services team, and why are we here? We're here really to ensure our customers are successful by providing technical guidance and services, mainly focused on our products, and the intent is to help our customers get more out of what they purchase from Actium. We do provide some advisory services ourselves, but we do also partner with SIs where projects demand more resources or skill sets that we don't have. HCL does own a majority shareholding in Actium, and we therefore have a very strong relationship with them, but it's not exclusive, and we can partner with other SIs should customers ask us to do so. Could I just have the next slide, please, Pradeep? Thank you. So we have three distinct service groupings. The first one was Insight, and that's primarily focused on helping customers make the right technology decisions and build a roadmap for the path forward. So if you're considering cloud, you probably want to do a study. If you want to understand how difficult it would be to migrate to Avalanche, you want to do a study, and that's what we provide. They're generally quite short, well-bounded service offerings, and they give you a clear output. The next offering area is success, and this is really about maintaining success via provision of technical product expertise, and that's to ensure optimal use of our technology. It also enables us to tell you about any updates we have and give you benefits of new features. The final one is realization, and this is a package of product with services, and that's to ensure that the delivery of a project based on our Avalanche platform is successful. And these vary from foundational projects, be it cloud, Avalanche Cloud or Avalanche on-premise, and that would really be an offering with something that's probably a line of business scale data warehouse with limited data sources to integrate and relatively simple reporting needs, so it doesn't need any re-engineering, to something that's enterprise level, where there's an awful lot of dependencies, many data sources, lots of data pipelines, and a complex data model with lots of consuming applications. Now that may need some re-engineering and would likely require a phased implementation approach and would take longer to deliver, obviously. So we provide packaged services with products, and we can send you more information if you're interested on those. Can I have the next slide, please? So we understand that migrating an existing warehouse to a new platform can be a very daunting task, but we have done this successfully numerous times in the past, and we have formulated some best practices and defined our own migration methodology, and that has a supporting migration tool which we built up over a number of years called Actium Assist. I'll cover that in a moment. The key best practices I'm going to list here, they're not the only ones, but for the purposes of brevity, I'll just go through these ones. The first one probably is understanding who all your stakeholders are, because a data warehouse has an awful lot of stakeholders. That's probably one of the reasons why legacy data warehouses are very difficult to change because of all the people that use them. And understanding what they expect from an outcome of a cloud data warehouse or even an on-prem version of Avalanche is probably the number one priority. And the reason for that is that missed stakeholders in their requirements means either you're not delivering the required outcome or your project plan misses some of the tasks. So we'd thoroughly recommend spending time on identifying your stakeholders and making sure you've fully captured their requirements. Any large migration to a new cloud data warehouse will require probably a phased approach, and that significantly reduces risk because implementing any new technology and replumbing an existing warehouse will naturally make people nervous, and most people are somewhat reluctant to accept change. So choose a simple application area and implement it as quickly as possible and learn from any mistakes, because you're going to have to coordinate a lot of people to get this project working. Getting your stakeholder buy-in is key, and delivering early success is a great way of getting their buy-in. Try and remove as much junk data as you can. Do some housekeeping, or at least archive data that you really don't need. Most data warehouses have a lot of data that is rarely, if ever, accessed. I suggest you do your housekeeping, speak to your DBAs and find out what data is not being used by any applications and try and remove it. Tools, although they're great, they cannot automate everything that needs to be done. They all have limitations. So you do need to understand limitations of these tools, and you have to plan how to do any manual tasks that are required, and you have to estimate those tasks as well. There is no silver bullet, in my experience, where you can fully automate the whole job. Performance is one of the key differentiators for Avalanche, and usually customers are very keen to specify their non-functional requirements in terms of how that's measured. So make sure you do have a very clear baseline. Make sure you know how you're going to measure that performance, i.e. the load, the concurrency, the volumes, and the query throughputs, etc. Because you need to make sure you measure it and have a apples for apples comparison that's accurate and fair. You need a rollback plan in case of any errors, because sometimes the unexpected does hit you. I once had an unscheduled building maintenance that took out the power during a data migration, and it was the live migration, and we had to roll back. So that was an unforeseen event. So make sure you do have a rollback plan in case of errors. And the last thing really is you have to test and test some more. And the first thing you should do is ensure that you've technically reconciled all the data that's been migrated. So prove that you've taken it from data warehouse A to Avalanche and that all the totals are correct. You should ensure that all your upstream and downstream integrations work, and you need to test those. And ideally, you run reports with the same data to prove outputs are the same, assuming you haven't changed your reports. We typically recommend customers do a period of parallel running to ensure outputs are correct and equivalent. You don't have to do that at the time. You can capture a feed and process it later, but you should do some parallel running. And most of our customers want to do that. Could I have the next slide, please, Pradeep? So we built a migration assistance tool, which we call Acting Assist, and you have a relatively poor resolution, I'm afraid, screenshot of that. It enables us to assess a database for migration, so it tells you how much it can migrate, and it automates as much as it can, so you can then go and migrate if you choose to afterwards. So it integrates with the database and pulls out the database objects and evaluates whether it can migrate the data types, the stored procedures, the user-defined functions, the constraints, the indices, and the data. And it does provide a list of what it cannot migrate to allow a user to manually intervene. An example would be if you have a stored procedure, for instance, that has some badly formed SQL, it will tell you that this SQL is badly formed, and you could go and edit it. Obviously, that SQL couldn't have run in the past if it was badly formed, but it will let you identify such things. There are certain things that the tool cannot do because of differences between platforms and language, and those things may need manual intervention. So it will give you a list of those things that need to happen. We have used our tool to perform numerous migrations in the past, and find it typically automates sort of 90 to 95% of inputs received. So it does a fair chunk of work for you, but there is some manual tasks that will need to be reviewed. The tool supports a number of sources, and these increase as we work on more sources. So we're continually developing this tool. And the current sources are Oracle Postgres, Sybase IQ, Netezza, Teradata, and MS SQL, and we're currently working on a Snowflake migration, which is nearing its completion. So we can assist you with migrating off those platforms, and we can do an evaluation. I'll be more than happy to do an evaluation of your current infrastructure to find out how easy it would be to migrate to Avalanche. So Pradeep, back to you.
Great, thank you, Greg. Just a reminder to everyone, you can enter questions using the Q&A button at the bottom of your screen. While we're waiting for those, just a reminder that we have a offer right now. If you go to active.com/avalanche, there's a 30-day trial available with a $500 credit. And if you qualify, you can also get 10 terabytes of free storage for a year, either on Azure or on AWS. And if you're a Snowflake customer today and you're seeing lots of surprising bills, we can help you cut those in half, guaranteed. So going back to questions, Greg, can you also have a look at the Q&A queue? So the ones the first question I see is on platforms running on premises. So if we do run Avalanche on-prem, you can basically get a downloadable version that runs on Linux or Windows. We also have a scalable version that runs across multiple machines over Hadoop. So you've also got a scalable system available on-prem. And that, again, that can be joined with your cloud service as well. And the next question is on which, so I'll read that again. Can Avalanche be used for OLTP? It is an analytic database first because it's columnar in nature. But if you want to do some updates, it's really good at handling updates. As you saw in the demo, it was able to handle updates pretty well. The reason it can do that is that it uses a patented feature called the PDT, Partition Delta Tree, is what that stands for. And the PDT is a feature that lets us do a look aside to see if a block's been updated before doing the update. And that's running in L1, L2 cache, so typically very fast to do that. We're talking about 2 or 3 millisecond overhead to do an update compared to doing a read. So that also gives us the ability to do some OLTP-centric applications on Avalanche.
There's a question about a Netezza migration. The question is, have we done a Netezza migration in the past, and what industry was that in? We have done Netezza migrations. We did one in the US not so long ago, and that was in financial services for a large global bank. The migration took roughly 9 months, and overall, I think the reduction in the TCO was about $7.5 million over 3 years. So there was a significant saving by doing the migration. But yes, we have done the migration from Netezza in financial services.
Great. And there's one last question we'll take. Someone asking about a retailer example in the EMEA. The one the one that comes to mind is Kiabi in France. They have a 600 stores across Europe, and they do sales analysis using Avalanche on-prem, and they they used to run on Oracle, and they did a side-by-side comparison and found Avalanche on-prem was 200 times faster, which is why they selected that as their platform for analytics. Okay, so I'm not seeing any more questions. We're 40 minutes in. That's a good time to wrap up. If you do have follow-up questions, please feel free to email us at asa@active.com. The event is being recorded, and we will make this recording available on demand after the event to everyone who viewed. Again, thank you, Greg, for presenting, and everyone for spending time with us today.